All right, we're live. Hey, everybody.
Ayo.
Oh, man. Okay, before we start, I have to mention something. Today, we have three birthdays, actually. We have Mr. Matt Hemley himself on the right side of your screen in the middle row. We have Justin Wisnant, who is not on the call today because he decided to go play a few rounds of golf. Happy birthday, Justin. He hates his birthdays, so we are celebrating it very publicly. And he's not on the call, but Mr. Devron Lee, our Orlando production director, third birthday. So, man, April 28th is a busy day for birthdays on our teams. So, happy birthday to all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm the only one here to represent the April 28th birthdays. Matt, you speak for everyone. Is there anything you'd like to say on behalf of everyone's birthday that's on April 28th?
No, I'm good.
Awesome. All right, here we go. Go ahead, Nate.
I'm going to shout out my brother's birthday. He's not watching, but one of my brother's birthdays today as well.
Another April 28th birthday? Shoot.
Yep, crazy.
Here he is. It's my sister's birthday today. No joke.
Wow. All right, something's wrong. Okay, I'm gonna move
Now
on.
people are just saying it to kind of because they got FOMO. Oh, it's my birthday too, actually.
Okay, all right, we're gonna start off the way we always do. Everybody's favorite non-dangerous explosive device game. Boom.
Keep exploding and everyone dies.
There you go, Matt. There it is.
Don't shut up or it's all gone. I got wires.
Okay, we're just gonna go right in here while we get people jumping on. We got 35 people watching. Come on, people. This is helpful. Share it with people. Invite somebody to watch. Start a watch party. Something.
Click on the link in the.
Click on the link in the description. In the chat.
Link in the
Yeah,
chat.
how do we? We can probably do that.
Share something. Okay. We are going to jump a little bit to section 4.2. Let's see what we got. 5 minutes, 5 modules, 1 strike. Sound good?
45 day, 45 point
days, 45
plan.
steps,
Day
1
45.
modules.
Company saved.
1 module per day. And we're going completely carbon neutral. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. I promise we'll actually get into something helpful soon. All right, here we go.
All right, what you got?
Okay,
what you
I got button, symbols. Simon says the
Button color and
keypad.
word.
Button
Symbols.
color is white, says detonate.
I got Simon says the serial number contain a vowel.
And I have something I've not seen before. The serial number does not contain a vowel. In
You got,
Q2VD1.
No wires?
No wires, sorry, but I have symbols, Nate.
You got memory?
Yeah, I
do
love
have memory.
symbols.
All right, Nate, my symbols are the trident thing, the 30 things. Looks like a
Yep.
menorah. I got a paragraph, the backwards P paragraph thing. I got the upside down P with looks like it's also a T.
With a T in it or something.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I've got the 3 that looks like an alien.
I got
3.
it. It's like a 3 that kind of continues.
Yep. All right, give it to me.
Okay, so do the
Andy,
first
give
one
me
you told me.
Sorry.
That was the trident.
Yep.
All right.
And then the upside down P with the T thing.
Yep.
And then the backwards P.
Yep.
And then the 3
Got
thingy.
it. Okay, I have another. I think I just need to click yes.
Hey, you said it does not contain a vowel.
It does not contain a vowel. Hey, somebody
what
look
you
up
got?
a needy module. I have a needy module that says yes or no, and it just says vent gas question mark. I'm pretty sure I say yes, but
Give me
Do
memory.
you have a
What you got
gas?
flashing?
I have 16 seconds. 15 seconds with the needy module.
Memory. What are your
Somebody
memory?
give me that needy module.
I'm looking it up.
I'm just gonna hit yes. Okay, well that was bad. Okay.
Oh,
Don't do that
on
again.
the
All right,
I see it.
I have green flashing.
What's your memory numbers?
1, and then 1, 4, 3, 2.
All right, press green.
Green. Now I have green, red. Green, red.
In memory, press the number 4 button.
That's
Press
in the
green.
second position.
Second
Press-
position.
Green, blue.
Green, blue. Now I have green, red, yellow.
Do you have a indicator that says CAR next to the button?
CAR. No, I do not.
Green,
Stand by.
blue, red.
Next memory. Next memory.
4, and then 3, 2, 4, 1. Green,
3, 2,
blue,
4,
red,
1.
Matt.
Yes.
Blue, red. All right, we're good on that.
Andy, memory. Press the number 2, second
shoot.
position.
Oh my god. Okay. Number 2, you said second position.
Yeah.
Bentley, hold the button and let me know the strip color, please.
Blue.
Blue strip, release when the countdown timer has a 4 in any position.
Hold on. 6, 5. Done. Okay, number 1 with 1, 2, 4, 3.
1, 2, 4, 3. Got it.
Hey, stay frosty on that needy module. It can reactivate at any time.
Yeah, I got it. It almost got me a second ago.
Andy,
Gotcha.
memory. Press number 2, second position.
Number 2, second position. Okay, I got 2 left. Number is 2, and then the numbers are 3, 2, 4, 1.
Press the button in the same position as you pressed in stage 1.
Hold on. What?
Which one is that?
No. Oh. Andy, memory. Press the number 3, first position.
Number 3, first position. All right, last one. Number 1, and it's 3, 1, 4, 2.
3, 1, 4, 2. Press the number 4, third position.
Boom, we're done. Yeah!
Oh, that was different.
We live to see another day. Hey, we can actually
Let's
do
do
Tech
it.
Tuesday now.
Yeah,
I forgot
we're
to mention
live.
that if we ever lose, we can't do Tech Tuesday. We just have to end it right there.
We'll be
Just have
dead.
to call it a day.
Yeah. All right. Well, there's about 50 people watching. Guys, keep sharing this. If you know other people on your production teams that would benefit from this, share it. Of course, we'll post it online afterwards again. But please feel free to share this link, share this YouTube stream. We want to try to get as many people to interact and ask questions in the chat. Today we're going to talk about signal flow. Last week we talked about signal flow, and we kind of started this conversation about, hey, what does it take to get a signal from source to destination? Joe set up how to think of signal flow and those ideas of source and destination. And we also kind of we walked through a couple different examples of signal flow with lighting and audio, and we started with video, and I decided to kind of keep that conversation going. And because our video signal flow can be so complex, and because it's so important to what we do on the weekends, wanted to take another week just to walk through that idea of signal flow in the video world. And we're going to talk about 4 or 5 different kind of phases or levels that our signal flow can take, from really simple to more complex, more what you would see on the weekends. So what I'm going to do is we are going to share this screen, and I'm going to walk through basically, let me share it with the Zoom people. Okay, there we go. So what I'm going to do is live draw a couple examples of signal flow from start to finish. I think audio's out of sync a little bit. Here, I'll fix that real quick. Yeah, sorry, we're just learning how to do things. We don't really know how to use technology very much. Thanks, OBS. We're trying to do it we're trying to do the cheap version of this. So, let's see.
You probably, Andy, you probably need an
Okay.
X32 to fix all that.
Yeah, probably. Should I go ahead and get an X32?
Yeah, yeah, we'll need to pull one.
I mean, I think an M7 will do it for you too.
Yeah. Or
Yeah, that'll work.
Or we probably need a a Digico something or other. Sponsors? No? Anybody?
Yeah, Digico fixes everything.
All right, cool. So let's start with the very basic video signal flow from source to destination. So here's an example. I want a computer. I want to get a computer to a screen. So I'm going to drop a box on here. This is going to be my computer. If I can spell. Cool. And then I want a screen. I'm just going to do a rounded rectangle. We're going to get fancy today. We're going to do rounded rectangle. And there's my screen. Got to do all caps to keep the branding there. Perfect. So I've got a computer here. I've got a screen over here. If I wanted to, I could probably just plug these two in with HDMI or SDI or whatever. Might have a converter in line. But this is seriously the most simple example of video signal flow. And depending on your setup, it could be as simple as this. I guess I could say TV or projector. This could be a TV, this could be a projector, whatever it is, but this is a very simple example of video signal flow, and sometimes it can be this simple. It can be just plugging a computer directly into a screen. This is like phase one, and this is a source, this is your destination. So here's the problem with this, and sometimes this setup works great. Sometimes this is all you need. So I want to introduce kind of a challenge here. What if now we need this computer to go to multiple screens? Let's say now we have, 2 or 3 or 4 screens. I'm just going to draw 4 screens. And say it's just four TVs. Maybe they're around our building, maybe they're on stage, whatever. Now I've got 4 screens here, but I can only plug, one computer into this screen at a time. Like this computer only has one output. So how do I get signal to all 4 of these sources, these destinations from one source? And if you know in the comments or in the chat, if you want to just try to take a guess, go ahead. But I'm going to introduce something into our system called a DA, or video DA, or Zach, what does DA stand for?
Distribution amplifier.
Distribution amplifier. So this DA that I'm going to draw, and you can get distribution amplifiers anywhere from 1 input to 4 outputs, 2 outputs, 8. I'm sure they make more. I don't know, but you can get different ranges of distribution amplifiers for however many outputs you need to a degree. So we're just going to do a 1x4 video DA here. And what a video DA does is it has 1 input and multiple outputs. So what we're going to do now is we're going to connect, so we're going to put this in the middle. We're going to connect our computer to our video DA. Then we're going to connect our video DA to each screen. And each one, the video DA can have, in this case, I'm just pretending like this is 4 outputs. And so now we've got all 4 screens plugged in. So this DA, this drawing's a little messy, forgive me on that. But this computer is now going to this video DA, and it's being split from that DA into 4 different outputs. So it's the same thing going to 4 screens. 1 source, multiple destinations. So everybody follow so far? Everybody good? Okay, next challenge. What happens when we add a second source? What do we do now? And we want to be able to put this source on one of these screens, or maybe one source on one screen, one source on another screen. We want more flexibility than what we can just get from this video DA. Does that make sense? So this is where we would introduce, and we kind of set this idea up last week a little bit, but this is where we would introduce the idea of a video router. So I'm actually going to get rid of this video DA, and we'll see this come back. This is helpful sometimes. a video DA to get one source to multiple destinations. Because a lot of times these are going to be cheaper than video routers, and so they might be the right solution. But I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of all these lines. So I've got 2 sources, and I've got multiple destinations. I'm going to drop in an example of a video router. So this is something I've drawn, and this is just kind of helpful to visualize what a video router might do. I'm going to drop my sources, my destinations over here, my sources over here. All right. So a video router allows us to connect sources and destinations independently, and then internally can control what source is routed to what destination, hence the name router, what source is going to what destination. So you can have, the benefit of this is you can have one source going to one or many destinations. And Zach kind of mentioned this last week, the beginning of last week, as we started talking about video signal flow. So I'll give you an example. So I'm going to plug in this computer. It's going to be input 1 on my router. I'm going to name this computer 2. And that's going to become input 2 on my router. So now we have both of our sources plugged into our router. And I'm going to connect on my screens to my outputs. So these are inputs over here. These are outputs over here. We'll see what happens in the middle here in just a second. So I'm going to connect this screen to input 1, output 1. This screen, come on, red dot. I believe in you. Come on, Lucidchart. Give me that sponsorship, by the way. I need that sponsorship. Well, that did not work. All right, so we've got the second screen plugged in. Boy, this is tough to do. Third screen and fourth screen. All right. Come on. Come on. There we go. Okay, I'm just going to leave it like that. All right, there we go. Everybody follow this so far? Okay, so we've got 2 computers, 2 sources, and 4 destinations in this example. And this little line, you know, sometimes you get a kink in your SDI cable or whatever, that happens. So what the router does is it allows you to select, hey, what source do I want to what destination? So we can go internally, we can say, hey, I want computer 1, I want that to go to screen 1. So what I can do is I can route internally, and we're going to look at how to do this in a second. We're going to look at kind of what this works. But I can route computer 1 or source 1 to destination 1. But what if I also want computer 1 to go to screen 2? Well, the benefit of a router is I can actually have source 1 also go to destination 2. So I can do this as well. Well, yeah, the arrows are, you're getting it. You get it. You understand. But then I want computer 2 maybe to go to screen 4. So I can have source 4, source 2 go to destination 4. So you see the benefit of like having a router in line is you can actually, you have a ton of flexibility with what you can send to what destination. So they cost, you know, there's more cost involved in having a router in line, but you can have a ton of flexibility with, you know, rather than having to decide up front when you're building the system or when it comes to launching a campus, rather than having to decide, you know, what we're actually wanting up front, we can put a router in line and just have all of our sources and all of our destinations kind of independent of each other. And the router allows us to control what source goes to what destination in real time. So we're going to sit on this for a second. So this is kind of like phase 3 of a video system. Multiple sources, multiple destinations with a router in the middle. Now, of course, all this stuff here in the middle, all these connections from source to destination are being done in this router, but you might wonder, like, how does this actually happen? So Joe and Zach are actually going to kind of show us what the control of these things looks like. So I have a 16 input, 16 output router here. We have one that's made by AJA. It's called the Kumo router. So Joe, I'm going to throw it over to Joe, and he's going to show us what control looks like for that. And then as soon as we do that, there's another type of router that we pretty commonly use made by Ross. It's called the NK router. And Zach is going to show you kind of what control of that looks like. But I want you guys to notice similarities between the two in terms of language, in terms of workflow, how this works. So, all right, Joe, here, you go ahead and take it away.
Well, I'll show you the device itself. So it's just a single 1RU device. You got your kind of faceplate, and then on the back, got my cables connected, but you've got inputs and outputs, and different routers will lay this out in different ways. The Kumo has put all the inputs along the top and then all the outputs along the bottom. Sometimes they will split. Different types of routers will put all the inputs on the left or the right, or sometimes even stagger them, for various reasons and everything like that. But let me show you the device interface. So one of the nice things about the Kumo is that you access it via the web. So once you've assigned it to an IP and you're on that same network, all you have to do is just go into your web browser, type in that IP address, and instantly you're into it. So the nice thing about that is anybody can access it very easily without installing a bunch of software and things like that. So I've got the Kumo 1616, which means 16 inputs, 16 outputs laid out right here. So you've got your menu navigation up here of just the different things that you can do. Configuration, that's where you're actually naming the inputs and outputs. You can choose color of the buttons, things like that. Salvo is the Kumo's name for a macro, so you can set up router macros. Network settings to give it an IP and things like that. Firmware, alarms, identify, just various different things for helpful information. So, but on the main interface here, you've got what in this context with the Kumo, they refer to as destination and source. Sometimes input output is the language that you'll see, but in this case, destination and source. So along the bottom, I took the liberty of naming our first 4 outputs, the screens 1 through 4 that you saw in Andy's drawing. And then under source, you've got computer 1 and computer 2. What sometimes trips people up is the action of routing is actually going to be sometimes opposite of your thought process. Because in the situation where I'm thinking like, all right, I need something on the screen, my mind is probably going to go to the input source first and go like, I need to get our program feed on that screen, or I need to get camera 1 on that screen. And so I'm logically going to go to that first. But ultimately what you're doing is you're choosing your destination first and then saying, what do I want to send there? So in this case, to match Andy's drawing, we wanted to send the first computer to screens 1 and 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click screen 1. And actually, this defaults it to having input 1 routed to output 1. So if I click here on destination 1, and then I would click on the top to choose the source that I want. So if you come here to screen 2, I'm going to choose source 1. So now what this is showing me is as I click around, I can see what's lit up as the source going to these destinations. Screen 3, oh, there's my label thing. So if you come in here, do a quick little label change. Get back to 3. So pretty easy to make those changes, which is nice. Screen 3, I want computer 2. Screen 4, I want computer 2. So now as I'm clicking through, I can see what is routed to each of my destinations. Now, again, it's easy to think of it in the opposite order and be like, all right, I need to go with computer 1, and where do I need to put it? Destination 8. Oh, wait, now what I actually just did is I just changed the routing to one of my screens because, again, start with the destination. So I'm going to have to go back through and see what happened and go, okay, now, screen 4 has got computer 1. I actually wanted that on computer 2. So it's very important to kind of think through the process of where you want to send something. And again, you start with the destination.
Yep.
Throw it over to Zach. Zach's going to show us that next router that we use.
All right, let me get this working.
So this is the, can you see it? Yeah, perfect. This is the NK router that we were talking about with Ross. So same type of thing, just it's very different as far as visually goes. It's also not a web browser. It is based out of Dashboard. So same thing though, for what Joe was saying, and Ross actually makes it a little bit easier and can't really screw yourself as bad. But you see over here on the left side, we've got our outputs, and on the right side, we've got our inputs, and all our inputs are actually grayed out. So we can't actually pick them because nothing's selected. But same concept, we pick our destination, and then over here on the right side, we can pick our source.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So
Andy.
notice the theme between the two is you have destinations and you have sources, and you always kind of start by selecting your destination. Because if you think about it, you can't have multiple things routed to one destination. Every destination has one source. But if you notice, that source might be going to multiple destinations. So Zach's logo A source is going to multiple destinations. We'll kind of show you like that drawing of what his example is in just a second. So that's an example. So those are two different routers, AJA and then the NK router. Very different workflows, but very similar language and similar. They're doing the exact same thing. They're internally making these connections that I showed you between the sources and destinations just via software. And then Zach has his big boy router at Valentine pulled up in the background as well. Let him show you how that works.
So same thing, but not really. The way that the router here works is very nice. It also can get, if for someone new to sit down here, you might be intimidated or not really know what to do because there's not really a visual pick and choose here. I have to know all the destinations and I have to know all the sources. So we can also, my router here is video and audio in one router, so I can get to the EQ. The video router is the EQX and the audio router is the EMR. So I can simply type in EQ here and then I can sort by destinations. And then we can see all the output destinations here on the left. And then same thing on the right. Here's all of our video sources. So I'm just going to change my monitor here in master control and I'm going to set it to bars. So I just simply type in bars, click it, and then here at the top hit take. So that's a nice thing about this router is I have to confirm what I want to do before making that change, and then I can just take it, and now that destination in here in master control has updated.
But yeah, that's the big difference with that router is there's so many sources and so many destinations that it ends up becoming like a text box list. There's not necessarily a big old list like the NK router can show you on either side. But it's the exact same concept. It's picking a destination and then saying, hey, what do I want going to that destination? So Zach, let's talk a little bit about so we're at phase 3. We've kind of talked about how to take multiple sources and multiple destinations and add flexibility in what we need to do. But of course, there's, a DA is limited in functionality, but inexpensive. A router has a ton of functionality, but depending on the scale of the router you get, can also be expensive. So you kind of have a little bit of a workflow, and I'll show you. Or actually, do you want to pull up the signal flow chart that you showed us last week? So we kind of got into this, and we wanted to go back into that. So you notice here, this drawing looks a little bit different, but you'll notice Zach has 6 sources, and he needed to get that to, in any different combination, to 34 different destinations. At least 34 different destinations. So he put this video router, and this is that Ross version, that NK router, the Ross router. So what you can see here is you have 6 different feeds coming in from, or actually, Zach, why don't you just walk us through it, because you can explain it better than I can.
No, you're doing fine. I'll try to make it labeled so that I also like to point out one thing that Jared said, the one nice thing about the router here at Ballantyne is you can't just go poking around into it. You have to be logged into it. Like with the Kumo that Joe showed, if you know the web IP address, you can get into it. For right now, with NK routers, you can get to them. That change is coming very soon from Ross, and we'll be able to password protect routers, which will be nice. But ultimately, it's a protection thing, which is very nice. But anyway, so right here, I've got 6 feeds coming over from the main router. Obviously, I've got room to add more, and I'm probably going to do that in the very near future with the way we're headed here, so that I can pull multiple things into these encoders. So we've got 34 outputs, and the first 30 of those are going to the KB encoders. I chose to only wire the first 2 of the last encoder so that I can feed this logo inserter module. So that's output 31, 32. So what I'm going to give you the example of how we get to the primary online platform. So right now we've got KB feed 1, which is master control module 1. So that output, master control 1 is leaving the EQX router on output 51, coming into input 1 on the NK router. And Andy, will you get your mouse off the screen? It's killing me.
Yep.
So then I'm actually taking that first feed and I'm coming down here to logo inserter background A input. So that's out 31. And then I am taking the logo inserter. We're putting a bug on it if we need to. Right now we're not, but the Throwback Thursday bug last week, if you watched, did come from this. So that's coming out of that into this DA card, and then out 1 of the DA card is coming back into input 31. The reason for the DA card is because output 4 is feeding the multi-viewer so that we can confirm that that logo is indeed being inserted on air for the feed. And then from input 31, we're going back and going to the various encoders here, and I'll show you that here. So if you notice here, I'm going to scroll down, and at the very bottom, I've got MC1 routed to logo A input. And then everywhere else that you see a logo A as the source going to all these encoders is how we're getting that inserted logo out to all of the platform. So you can see I've got them labeled here what all they are. If it doesn't have a label beside it, it's currently an unused channel. We added all these encoders to balance out the workload due to the high volume of viewers on the weekends right now. So that's that workflow essentially. Pretty much coming.
So what you'll notice is that there will be a lot of situations where you have an input in the router going to, or a source going to a destination, and then that destination, we're going to look at this in a second with the next kind of step of video signal flow, but you'll have that destination going back into the router as another source and then going to screen or some sort of other destination. So that's what Zach has a lot of going on right now, where he's got that first feed, which is kind of one of the main feeds for Elevation Online, with the program video mix and all that stuff going out to the hardware device that's doing the logo inserter, and then that going back into the router, and that's actually what's feeding these devices. He could just as easily route that first feed, that first source, to all those encoders, all those destinations. Those encoders, by the way, are what's actually getting the feed to YouTube, Facebook, etc. He could easily route that, but then it wouldn't have the logo overlaid on top of it. So we'll see a little bit of an example of kind of why that's important too. But that confuses people a lot, where you create these loops, and that's something Zach touched on last week, where you create these loops sometimes with video routing, because you might have sources going to destinations, and those destinations also become sources again in the router, and those go to other destinations. So it's helpful to have things like this drawn out, or even if it's just on a piece of paper, to just kind of draw what you want when you're thinking about, hey, what needs to go where, what actually needs to go to this destination, what sources actually need to go to this destination. So now, Zach, I wanted you to touch on something real quick, because in my mind, and we talked about this a little bit last week, it's like, well, if you can easily, and it seems like it's pretty easy to pick, okay, I want this source on this destination, and we have plenty of flexibility in terms of like, I can get, this computer to this many screens, and I can change that on the fly. And Joe, you even mentioned having like salvos or macros where you can do multiple routes at the same time. But why is that not a good idea to, like, why wouldn't I just do that during an experience?
Was that a question for Joe or for me?
Both, and we'll start with you though.
Why do you not make routes during an experience?
Yeah.
Is that what it? Routes during experience can definitely mess things up. If you don't fully know your workflow, know your system, know what's doing what, you can absolutely mess things up. Things can get out of sync. For those of us that have experienced me forgetting to change the source going to living as one and having to stop the event on the weekend and restart it, that's a perfect example of why you don't change sources. Also, if it can sometimes make gear mad once it loses signal, and coming back, like a lot of times capture devices will just, the recording will be botched. Some of them will lock together if you've got LTC pulled to them, some of them will not. And you also just have to really make sure you know exactly what's going on, and be able to lock people out. Here at Valentine, there are router panels in video control, but all the destinations are destinations that are safe to make routes on during an experience. And if it's something critical that we have to change during the experience, then 90% of the time it's me making that change just to protect the workflow of literally everyone else.
Yeah, I'll jump in. And another part of it is that the router is really going to have one style of transition. It's just a hard cut. And what the thing is also is happening is it's breaking signal to the output device and then reestablishing it. So if you're doing a hard route like that to a projector, for example, you're typically going to see the projector input menu pop up, reestablish the signal. And the other aspect of it is a router is really a configuration tool. It's not necessarily a device for any kind of performance or playback. So you don't have all of the layering effects, the keying and things like that a switcher can do and all that kind of stuff. Your router is really a part of your infrastructure, and the switcher is really related more to the execution of your service, your experience.
Okay, so that actually brings up a good point, and that kind of leads into my next thing. So let's do this then. Let's say now, so you mentioned, okay, now we need to switch my screen. There we go. Oh, you can't see. 1 second. I'll get us back on there. Come on. Oh man, love OBS. Love it so much. Not really. There we go. Okay. So you mentioned the switcher and how, like, with the router, you don't have all the functionality that you have with the switcher. So, like, keying, cross dissolves, transitions, all that kind of stuff. So if that's a requirement, then let's go ahead and add a switcher. And I have a switcher drawn, and it looks super complex just to kind of just to push the point home that we said last week that there's a lot of stuff going on inside these devices that you have to kind of know that before you can really get a good understanding of how to get signal from source to destination. So this is one example of that. But at the end of the day, the switcher still has physical inputs and outputs. So both of these devices have inputs and outputs and ways to get things from an input to an output. So I'm just going to drop a switcher in here, and now I've got a switcher and a video router. So, which this is what a lot of our workflows would look like. We're going to have usually a video switcher to do all of the different effects, keying, cross dissolves, etc. in line. But then we're also going to have a router in line to do some of this flexibility. Now, here's my question, and Zach, Joe, I'd love for y'all to speak into this. Why wouldn't we just use a switcher? Why would we use a router in the first place? Why wouldn't we just use a switcher and plug our stuff directly into the switcher inputs, and then plug our destinations directly into switcher outputs?
I'll use the MFK.
So a good reason for that is because a switcher has a limited amount of inputs and a limited amount of outputs at all of our locations that are running carbonites, or at least moving forward with the carbonite frames we're doing. You got 18 inputs and 10 outputs.
Yep.
And so that's very limited, and you want to be able to save those in that infrastructure to truly be the switcher versus be the router. And so if we were just trying to simply pass sources through, we would be burning up resources within the switcher and not be able to do multiple program feeds or have a clean feed coming out or have auxes. And a lot of the way we're setting up a lot of our campuses, we are routing certain things directly to a monitor or the projectors or whatever, but it's all fed via aux so that we can change it in the moment if we needed to. However, we're not really using that as a router. One thing to also know is that a frame synced source will also strip audio. So if you're trying to pass audio through it, it's going to get stripped off if that input is also being frame synced, whereas a router doesn't care. It's using external reference for everything, and therefore it literally will pass whatever signal you give it through, as long as it's a good signal and a signal that is in the right format of the rest of the system.
Yeah. So we should talk about frame sync at some point in another Tech Tuesday. That'd be an important topic. That's why when you if you plug in a camera, it's like all shifted up and stuff. But so that's a great point. So in this example, though, if this was all we had, 2 computers and a couple of screens, 4 screens, we probably could get away with that. Like you could probably get away with just doing a switcher and just plugging stuff directly into that, or maybe even getting creative with some DAs of one of our newer buildings. And this is what a permanent building would look like more often. So we have in the middle we have a Ross NK 3G34, so that's 32 inputs and 34 outputs, and you can see that we have just about every input taken up and accounted for. But our switchers are only going to have 18 inputs. So we would have to have a massive switcher, which again would be more and more cost. And then, it still only has 10 outputs. And that's a larger scale switcher. And so there's no way we'd be able to drive all the different outputs and things that we need to feed throughout the building, still have the flexibility to change what destinations, what sources we want on what destinations, etc., without a video router or without spending a ton of money on a switcher. So we're kind of splitting up the work between the switcher has a limited number of inputs and outputs or sources and destinations, but it can do more with those. It can add keyers, it can add transitions, it can cleanly switch from one source to another. The router has a greater capacity of inputs and outputs, but a very limited functionality of just being able to almost physically plug in one thing to another. So the switcher is drawn a little bit different in this scenario, but you can see switcher outputs and switcher inputs over here. So this is kind of how our switcher is represented. So we would actually have our switcher inputs be fed by the video router and then send the outputs of the switcher. So whatever we do in the switcher, send those outputs back into the video router to then go to different destinations. You can actually, if you're not careful, you can create loops if you just routed switcher inputs to switcher outputs or switcher outputs to switcher inputs. You could create like a video loop, a feedback loop. But in a lot of cases, that allows us the flexibility to then say, hey, what input do we want? What inputs do we want on the switcher? Anything else, any of our other sources in the building can be inputs to the switcher, and we can change those on the fly. But we don't have to have every input or every source connected to the switcher, physically connected to the switcher all the time. So that's the benefit of having a video router and a video switcher in line. What we're going to do next week, because the thing, go ahead, Joe.
All right. Sorry to interrupt real quick, but I was just going to add, you kind of touched on it. Ultimately, what we're trying to build in is maximum flexibility.
Yeah.
And rarely ever do we have a source and a destination directly connected. Because, I mean, if you think about it, like a projector might be up high or a certain piece of gear might be in a rack buried a little bit. And if you want to change the source to something like that, you're getting a lift out, you're getting a ladder out, you're unscrewing things, that kind of stuff. So any of those direct connections just increase the amount of time it takes to make a change. And so this router offers that kind of flexibility to be able to really quickly change and digitally change anything that you want. So again, it's really about maximum flexibility.
Yep. And there's a couple other things. And so what we're going to do, just because this is such a loaded topic, is we're going to pick up next week and dive a little bit more into this and show how, in a final video workflow, how you would get a source to a destination in our context. So we're going to take a camera into the router via either plugging it into the back of a fly pack, which a lot of you would do, or through a patch bay in our permanent campuses. It's just another way to add more flexibility. We'll dive into that. And then we'll go from the router into the switcher, and then from the switcher back into the router, and then out to our screens. So we'll draw all that, and we'll kind of pick that up next week. So right now we have basically 4 levels of signal flow. We started off, if you remember, very simple with just one computer to one screen. And then we said, okay, we need multiple destinations. We need multiple things. So we added a DA, and that fed one source to multiple destinations. And we said, okay, we have multiple sources and multiple destinations. Now we need a flexibility of a router. And then after that, we said, okay, now we need to add a video switcher because we need to be able to cross dissolve from source to source and do keyers, overlay lyrics, do effects, things like that. So we added a switcher, and now we have the switcher and the video router kind of working in tandem with each other to feed our destinations. So we are going to kind of pause there and take some questions via the chat. So if you have questions about what we've talked about so far, go ahead and put them in chat, and we will start to answer them. Let's scroll through and see what we have so far. I know y'all have been kind of jumping on the chat and answering a few questions. I know Alex was asking, do you run SDI to all your screens, or do you ever convert to something like HDBT for external screens in lobbies, classrooms, etc.? Joe?
Yeah.
One second. There we go. Oh, man. Why did it do that? Come on, Zoom. Technical difficulties. I need that slide on on my OBS scenes.
Yeah.
So do we run SDI directly to our screens all the time?
No, actually, it's a relatively new thing for us. As in the last year or so, we've been purchasing projectors that have SDI inputs, which eliminates the need for a converter at the projector, which is kind of nice. It's one less thing that can fail, one less thing that is part of the troubleshooting process. But for the most part, we have converters in line just about everywhere before any kind of output device.
Yeah, so it's usually like SDI to HDMI or whatever. Just depends on what input the projector or TV has. Obviously, a lot of TVs are going to have SDI input, so we're going to have an HDMI converter or something like that in line. Anybody want to give their thoughts on Blackmagic in terms of reliability, etc.?
I'll give you this because
I want to hear from Zach.
Everyone gets real saucy about Blackmagic. So here's what I'll say. They make things that have worked for us, and they make things that have not. I think that's the case for everybody. It's a widely used brand and product line that has been successful for a lot of people. Unfortunately, we haven't had the best luck with it. The HyperDeck has been a very reliable device for us for a lot of years. And their micro converters, the really small little guys, have proven well to work. But we've just and maybe it's something specific about our setup that it just doesn't love, but we've had those types of converters fail on us more often than not. They tend to be needing a very, very specific a format like the micro or the mini converters of SDI to HDMI, or an HDMI SDI. Even when you're connected to a computer, has to be 1080i. So if you send it P, you send it 720, it's not processing, it's not going to work. Where there are other converters that will actually be fine with any of those things. So we haven't had the best luck with it. We do have a couple products that we love that have been good for us, but ultimately we've had more success and can feel more like some of the Ross things are a much more reliable product for us.
Yeah. Jose was asking what happens after an experience, so with the captures and things like that. Zach, I don't know if you have it drawn yet, but because your entire video workflow out of that router, you also have several capture devices between. We use Softron capture. We actually do use some Blackmagic products in that workflow, the HyperDex. We have backups for it though. But we are recording a ton of feeds. Not to get in too much detail with it, but we typically hand those program captures, whether it's a clean feed or a dirty feed with all the overlays on top of it, to our archive team, our video team, and then they'll edit that. Usually we'll take the individual camera feeds and re-edit those together, fix any cutting mistakes, put the overlay graphics back on, and then export that and upload that to the different social platforms like YouTube, Facebook, or wherever we post archives. So that is a big picture sort of how that workflow works. I'm sure they could speak into that, but we all here pretty much just hand the content off to them and they take care of it from there. Yeah, Alex is asking for video directing and communicating with camera ops. We should definitely have do a guest appearance with Chelsea. On that one. Have her do that.
That would be awesome.
And
Chad Vegas from Bethel.
yeah, I was about to say to plug his stuff. He has something coming out, doesn't he?
Yeah, he just posted it yesterday. He's going to start offering some kind of one-on-one coaching and training on video directing and that kind of stuff. And but yeah, give him a follow, Chad Vegas, on Instagram, and you can see a lot of stuff that he does and Bethel does. But yeah, super cool guy, super talented, really knows what he's doing. But yeah, check him out.
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect example of why we don't make changes during the experience. Braden said the production feed to the encoder changed routing this week.
Yep.
And it blipped. Yes. So normally that, if it wouldn't have been just a production feed, that's something I would have never done. Because of that, things can get out of sync. Sometimes the encoder could just take the channel off air. Seen that happen as well when we've been testing. So that's a perfect example and of actually what happens when that when something like that changes. And I even thought through it. I'm like, I know that it's probably going to blip, and you might even see bars for a second, but everyone was asking for it, so I went ahead and did it. In the weeks previously, I've tried to just change the multi-viewer input windows so that we don't experience that drop. But luckily it stayed on air and came back. But that's a perfect example right there of why you do not make critical changes during a live broadcast.
Yeah, totally. One thing to point out about multi-viewers, at least the way they are set up at Valentine, is the fun thing with multi-viewers is basically you have one screen that has, however many destinations on it. So you can route each one of those destinations. That's why production uses multi-viewers, because it'd be crazy to have however many, probably, I don't even know how many different sources that we would need to preview in real time. It'd be crazy to have a video control room with that many screens previewing each individual source to make sure that it's correct. So that's what the purpose of a multi-viewer is to take all those sources and just kind of consolidate them all into one screen so we can get them onto one TV, one destination, and have a multi-view of a bunch of different sources that we can preview before we take them live on air. So we didn't even really bring up multi-viewers, but that's probably a topic for its own day. But it's all the same idea. It's just a lot of different destinations on one screen. So, yeah, any other questions? Well, that's a good question. Jeremy, does your router integrate with multi-viewers at Valentine, or are there SDI cables for every input of the multi-viewer?
Let me share my screen. I actually was pulling that up in case it got asked. Stand by.
Yeah.
So, let it show up. There we go. So here is, so yes, it is internal. It is separate cards, but it's Evertz workflow. So there's a cable going to, there's one single cable going to every single multi-viewer head. And here we have 5 or 6 cards. Each card has 2 outputs. So here you can see all of the routing to that. So I can change the sources at any time going to all the multi-viewers, and we'll change those out. We will change those out on a weekend depending on what's going on. So you can see here, just literally, it's another router output, which is nice. But it also is, in the Evertz workflow. So we're not having to pull 96 or something BNC cables over, and we're also not burning router outputs. This is internal to the router. A lot of multi-viewer, or a lot of router and switcher, a lot of router and multi-viewer companies don't work like that. So you're physically some days burning router outputs. But the one nice thing about with the EQX line is you're not burning output. So I have a 180 by 180 router, and that's truly inputs and destinations. And the multi-viewer stuff is all internal, so we don't waste outputs when we're having to do that.
Yeah, same idea with Dashboard. Their multi-viewer is generated. There's Ross, their multi-viewer is generated by the switcher. Zach, go ahead and pull up Dashboard real quick and go into the configuration tool. You can kind of quickly see how that works. But yeah, this is another great thing about the Ross switchers is that the multi-viewer is generated by the frame itself, Carbonite frame, so that you can go in and you can just, under this tab, you have a multi-viewer option, and then you're just choosing sources, and you've got all the different layouts, 4x4, big and small windows. On that left side, there's that layout button you can click, and you've got all sorts of different options depending on how many sources on screen that you want, what configuration, and then off of that box you see the current layout that he's got. Right there, you can see all the different inputs, how they're laid out, and it has 2 actually. That's right. So it gives you a lot of flexibility, and then you're not again, using outputs. The actual switcher frame has a multi-viewer output time. So nice function.
Yeah, super helpful. And obviously a multi-viewer is pretty critical to any production system. You have to be able to preview multiple sources at the same time. So, but like I said, it'd be crazy to have a screen for every. We should probably do that in our next building. Just do a screen for every.
That's true. And do it like a TV truck. And then
Yeah.
here's like the multi-viewer configuration here. Unfortunately or fortunately, with Ross makes it very nice, and you get predetermined ones, so you don't have to build it out. But here is, this is our primary online camera multi-viewer. Actually, no, that's not it. This is it. So we can see all the camera sources here where Andy was talking about. So we don't have to have a TV for every single one of these camera inputs. That type of thing. Also, another one that our team uses a lot is our campus return multi-viewer. So 32, no, it's not 32 windows. I think it's 25 windows, so that we can see that versus having to have 25 individual monitors up on a wall somewhere.
Yeah. All right, last question. I'll take it from Jose, non-tech question. What's been the challenge for you during this season? He says he has the thought that Elevation has everything figured out, which we don't. Spoiler alert. But what are your challenges on going 100% online? Which is a great question, and I think there's a lot of people that could definitely speak to this, because especially in ministry, there's a lot of people who have depended on creating live experiences, and now we've gone totally broadcast pretty much. So I mean, Joe and Zach, you're both kind of at the leading the charge in 2 different sort of avenues. What's been like some of the challenges from you in this, just like complete shift in the way that we do ministry.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, mine has been largely personal because I'm so used to getting my hands on things, and me and a couple of the guys, our primary responsibility on the weekend is providing real-time support for our other 19 campuses outside of Valentine, and none of those are operating right now, and so you're kind of sitting here going like, what do I do? So we've been trying to, so Zach and Nicole, our online production director, have really been carrying a significant amount of weight above and beyond what they already were carrying. So I know what we're trying to do is just support them and help them in any way that we can and be available to them, even if it's little things of like, I mean, even just this weekend, Zach needed just a small device, and Justin ran it and drove it from his house 25 minutes away just to deliver it to him in the morning. So Zach had what he needed for the weekend. So really just trying to find ways to support the team that is still, making the weekend happen and everything.
Yeah.
It's definitely a challenge because everything now is online, and everything that is streamed comes out of this building, whether or not it's happening here or not. It's leaving. The signal is getting to the internet from this building. So Joe has played a big part in helping with Rhythm Night Live, and that's actually at Matthews. We're streaming it here, QCing it, and pushing it to the encoders. So it's really been a workflow change. The router that I showed you, the Ross NK router, we actually put that in last week. So I've had to stay on my toes, and all of us have had to stay on our toes, and we're having to update things and be flexible and make changes and make it work for this season. It's a mental thing and a physical thing, just to stay flexible, but teaching people, letting people help us.
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely the big thing, is just like sort of, I mean, obviously adapting with the church. Adaptability is a big thing, and the needs of the church, but also just staying, on top of like, hey, what's important now? That's been a big thing, a big question for our whole staff, is what's important now to work on, because of course we can look, however many months into the future when church goes back to normal, but we're all kind of looking forward to this new normal. Not necessarily. Pastor Stephen, if you've been watching the sermons, has been preaching a lot about not just waiting for things to get back to normal, but really looking forward to a new normal. And so just even making stuff like this a part of our workflow and a part of our normal, rather than just sitting around waiting for things to happen to get back to normal. It's been a challenge to put the effort and energy into things that we're not used to doing, stuff like this, but it's been a fun challenge for sure. And I'm looking forward to seeing how, when we start meeting in church again, how stuff like this can become still a part of our workflow, but still support, mass gatherings and things like that. So
Clint said,
yeah.
while letting people help us. Yeah, man, that's been a tough thing. Like, I can be a huge pain in the ass some days because I hold this very tight, and like the team here on this call can speak to that. Like, you come in and you're going to do it my way because I figured out how it works, and it's a season where we're letting everyone learn, and you gotta be open to it. You gotta let things go. Pastor put that thing up the other day, and honestly, I was like, come on, man. Like, really? Like, you could have just texted this to me instead of putting it out on the internet. Let me had something for myself, because it like hit, like Nicole sent it to me, and I was like, oh my God. Like, okay, here we go. It's time to continue letting it go. And I feel like I'm learning in that season, because I do hold things tight. The people that work very close with me know that I'm going to have my hands in every single little thing, and I'm going to follow you, and I'm going to ride you until I trust you. I'm an 8, man. You got to earn my trust, especially with something that I've helped build. And this team is like killing it. But yeah, you got to let things go right now. Not let it go. You got to learn to release it and loosen up your grip and let other people help you hold it, or else we're just all going to die in this season, because it's a lot right now. There's a lot of hours. Just loosen up those things, man. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go to Pastor's Instagram account and watch his Instagram TV that he did last week.
Yeah.
If you're carrying a lot of weight right now, man, just go watch it. It's good. It's so dang good. It'll hurt, but you need to hear it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And ultimately, like, the goal is giving the gospel message the best presentation possible so that people hear it, receive it clearly, and can really hear from God and not be distracted by router mistakes or poor camera shots or bad graphics and that kind of stuff. So ultimately, like, yeah, Zach's one of the most territorial people I know, but it's because he cares so much about the product and he cares so much about the gospel going out with clarity. And so it's less about, holding things tightly because you personally want to do it. It's more about caring so much about the message that's going out that you're going to put a higher priority on a quality message than you are, giving people chances to fail. And there is health in giving people chances to fail because they learn from that, but not at the expense of the clarity of the message.
Yeah. Awesome.
One last thing, I'll answer one question because that's twice now that it's kind of popped up.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
Encoding and decoding could be a whole Tech Tuesday thing. But as far as getting the feed from Matthews to here, everything we're doing on returns is with High Vision. It's all just their standard streaming format. Actually, the day that we talk about that, we'll get Zach Zolo involved with us and have him walk us through because he knows it way more than I do. But as far as the campus feeds to here, it's not SRT. It's just H.264 or whatever it is. Like I said, I don't know. Pushing a 4 megabit stream over. That's doubled from what we normally do for a weekend just to make the Rhythm Night feed look better. But yeah, High Vision, just pushing it back over here. And that way we can look at it, make sure it's good, and push it to the encoder.
Yep.
And really everything that's happening at at Matthews campus that we're broadcasting from and creating it, we're running it just like a weekend campus. There's a switcher, there's video playback, there's cameras. I mean, it's in a slightly condensed format because it's in a, part of the room that's not normally broadcasted from. But in a sense that's kind of what we feel we're good at. And so let's just run it like a weekend, have the same gear in place, have the same workflow, use the same tools to send it to Valentine.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, we're going to keep on this topic next week because there's a lot here and it's definitely pretty applicable. And of course, if we don't get into it next week, we'll definitely start to see where the video and the audio worlds collide. And we'll get into this idea of what happens when you have a source that has audio and video and you need those to go to different destinations. So we're going to get into that. We're going to keep on this topic, but we'll have this up on replay on YouTube. So if you miss anything, go back and check it out there. Feel free to share it with your team, share it with people. And we will see you guys next Tuesday. Thanks for joining us.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.